I'm one of those people who has kind of mixed feelings on Zack Snyder. So some of his earlier stuff, and I say that, I guess, relatively speaking, I really enjoy. I think Dawn of the Dead, which I don't really think is supposed to be a precursor to this, because this has sort of a totally different zombie origin associated with it. You can tell that from the beginning of the movie if you've seen this, but Dawn of the Dead, I think, is actually a really good, really well-made, and really super intense zombie movie. And I think Dawn of the Dead is definitely better than Army of the Dead, and I'll get into that a little bit more here momentarily. But beyond that, I really like Man of Steel. I think that's actually a really underrated superhero movie, and I'd love to see a sequel to that. I keep crossing my fingers that that will happen, even though at this point it seems like, you know, the people who are running the DC universe have sort of moved away from the Henry Cavill Superman verse, if you will, the Snyder verse, I guess. So I don't know if that'll ever happen, but I really enjoy Man of Steel. I thought 300 was good. Once you get past that, you know, I'm not the biggest fan of Snyder's directorial techniques, right? And so, you know, with Justice League. So the original Justice League, I guess the 2017 version, it's just not a good movie. I mean, it's moderately entertaining from time to time, but it just feels kind of bland and flat. And I have watched the Snyder cut of Justice League, the over 4-hour long version of that movie, and, you know, I think it's definitely better. It's markedly improved, as any, you know, movie that has sort of a 4-hour window probably would be, because it's got everything the director would have wanted to include in that. And I think it is kind of cool to see a director have their vision fully realized, and kudos to HBO for allowing that to happen. But I do think it's a little bit long. I think it's got way too much slow motion. He seems to be really obsessed with that, at least in the Justice League movie. There is some of that here, but I think it's toned down in a good way, quite a bit. But so I think, you know, the Snyder cut of Justice League is better, certainly. But let's get into Army of the Dead and sort of where we're at here. And I think right off the bat, it does a lot of things well, and I think it is, for the most part, entertaining. You know, and this, to me, this is the kind of movie that's perfect for Netflix. It's the sort of thing that if I had seen it in a theater and paid, you know, I don't know, $10 to $15 or whatever it is these days to go to a theater, and I'm hoping to go to a theater again really soon, I probably would have been kind of disappointed in it. But it's perfect for Netflix, right? If you have that subscription and you can sit and watch it and carve out a little over 2 hours, I think it's about 2.5 hours long, you'll probably find that you mostly enjoy it, even though, and it's kind of hard to put my finger on this, it feels a little too padded out. I think it probably could have been a little bit shorter, maybe even a 2-hour movie, but it mostly does work well. But I do have some gripes with it, and a lot of it comes back to the way Snyder directs things, right? A good chunk of this movie, for whatever reason, is really kind of out of focus and super zoomed in. And I'm not sure if that's meant to give it sort of an authentic feel, if it's meant to add some kind of emotional weight to what we're seeing on the screen. But I think, you know, that's sort of a mistake in and of itself. To think that a movie titled Army of the Dead, that's set in Las Vegas, where hordes of zombies have overrun everything, you know, is going to have some kind of really deeply emotional underpinnings to it, is probably a fatal flaw from the outset. And, you know, the characters in this movie are mostly good, but I really wasn't invested in any of them with any kind of depth, I guess would be the word there. And the other big thing here, and I really hate to say this because I know a lot of people who, you know, work on movies obviously are putting as much effort into it as they can, but the acting is just not that great. I think Dave Bautista is fine as a leading man. I don't think he's amazing. You know, and I don't think that has anything to do with how much I like Guardians of the Galaxy and separating him from Drax and that character, which I think is really, in a lot of ways, kind of shaped his career, of course. But I just think he's okay as a leading man. His acting is fine for the most part. Some of the supporting characters just aren't that great, and specifically there's a helicopter pilot in this movie with a couple of lines of delivery that are just, you know, sort of on par with what you would expect from sort of a Sci-Fi Channel movie, you know, giant eel versus mega shark or that sort of thing. It just feels really overly, you know, campy in a bad way. I mean, a movie like this is supposed to be campy, but this is campy, bad campy, the way the dialogue is delivered and the acting. It feels like you're watching a made-for-TV film in certain parts, and that's not a good thing. I don't think that was intentional. Now, one thing I will say that this movie does really well is it has some of the best opening, or I guess one of the best opening credit sequences I've seen in a movie in a while. This is one of the few places I think where slow motion is used to great effect, and it's really kind of a hilarious opening. And I think the way that it builds tension, really from the moment that the first zombie is set free, it's part of some sort of military or government project. That there's an accident on a desert road outside of Las Vegas, and it gets free and kills some soldiers, and of course they are quickly transformed into zombies and they descend on Vegas. And the credits are really just sort of playing out as you would probably expect, where Vegas is just being shredded and bombarded by the government and eventually is walled off to try and contain what's happening there. So the credits are good, and there's some other just sort of cool things in the movie. There's a zombie tiger that's part of Siegfried and Roy's act. That's kind of a nice touch. And the scene where the tiger kills a character that you really, of course, don't like, it's being set up, you can see it coming. It's cool the way it works. And this has got some really good gore effects in it. I won't sort of give all of those away here if you haven't seen the movie, but really good practical effects, really good, I think, CGI too. It mostly looked convincing to me. It didn't look overly cheesy in that regard, but, is this a zombie movie that you have to see if you love the genre? I guess, again, it's fine. It was a laid back, kind of moderately entertaining way to spend a couple of hours. But beyond that, I wouldn't recommend that people go out of their way to check it out. I think Snyder, has done a lot of really cool projects. To me, this feels like a little bit of a step back for him in terms of directing technique and ability. So I'm kind of curious to see where he goes from here. And really what he's doing here is kind of doubling down on a lot of things that I think, have come to be trademarks for him, but don't work all that well here for whatever reason. So I'm just one of those people who likes to just set from a movie perspective, set the camera up from a reasonable distance and let the scenes play out. There's no reason to get overly artsy or overly complex with that. Just let the scenes play out, unless there's a really specific reason to try and have the camera pan in such a way as to add some kind of subtext or some kind of meaning that is meant to sort of, shift the viewer's field of vision and eye in a certain way. But here, I just don't see that happening. I just see it, as sort of Snyderisms for the sake of Snyderisms. So anyway, that's my take on Army of the Dead. If you've seen it, let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.